Great. Okay, so welcome to this segment that I call Supporting Stressless Living. And if you don't know me, my name's Felicia Jones. I'm a nutritionist and a stress management trainer. And today I'm here with my friend Judith, who I'm really excited to have on because I've known Judith for a while, but didn't actually know a lot about her health journey. So for me, it's been really exciting, been a real eye-opener to learn, so much about your health journey and that journey that you've been on. So we're going to delve into that in this session. And really, these sessions, these segments are all about us sharing our health journey, our health and well-being journey, and particularly focusing on stress, because we all get stressed, but sometimes that stress really gets out of control. And when it does, it can cause so many problems. So we're sharing stories about our health journeys and our well-being journeys, but not only about the stress, but also about how we overcame that, what we did. And, in some cases, it's been a really long journey to overcome that. And what we're doing now, because it's not just a one-off, it's something that you have to continually do. So we're going to be delving into that today and throughout the different video series. So Judith, welcome. I'm really pleased to have you on. It's really lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, Felicia. I'm honoured to be asked. So,
oh, thanks so much. So we're going to go back into your health journey, but before we do that, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do now?
Yes, I run my very small bijou little business, which is called Organised Chaos. And I suppose in a nutshell, I help people to organise their chaos. It started as a practical decluttering business, but more recently, it's kind of chimed in with my own experience. And basically, I help women to create more space in their homes and more space in their heads. So I'm helping people to tackle head clutter.
That's amazing, and
I love it.
I think that really even goes into our stories about stress as well, and I think we're going to unpack some of that. So it's lovely to hear that you've been on a journey and now you're helping other people. So that's fantastic. Can we just go back a little bit to when you first started having sort of stress symptoms, when things first started appearing to you? What was going on for you? What you thought was happening, or did you not recognize that something was up?
Well, I'm just trying to think of a succinct answer to this one, because if I'm absolutely hand on heart honest, I would say I was a stressed child.
Right.
I was a stressed child, but I didn't understand. My parents didn't understand. So I just kind of sort of tumbled through it, really. I was a sensitive child, and so I kind of arrived in adulthood already stressed before any adult type life experiences actually added on to that.
Yeah.
And I suppose the ultimate, if that's the right word, I'm not sure whether it is, the ultimate impact of all this cumulative stress, which just really was my normal. Stress was my normal.
Right.
For more years than it has not been my normal.
Yeah.
Which, I'm kind of only just realizing, actually.
Yeah.
And it culminated in 2015 with me being diagnosed with adrenal exhaustion, when it just felt like someone had pulled the plug out of me. I had zero energy. My emotions were all over the place. I couldn't have a clear thought. So as for what was going on at the time, I don't think it was so much what was going on at the time. It was like all the stuff in the past. It was like rolling something down a hill, like a snowball.
Yeah.
And it's only a small snowball when you set it off, isn't it? But by the time it gets to the bottom, it's enormous and it can crush you. That was kind of how I felt, really.
So were you still working and doing things at that time?
When adrenal exhaustion hit, I was already running my own business, and basically everything, and I mean everything, ground to a halt for quite a while, actually. Yeah.
And what kind of symptoms were you getting?
In the build up to it, because it kind of, my the stress that I had become used to, which is
Yeah.
a bit ironic, really. I was living with it and thinking that that was normal, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was almost like something my body was saying, oh, Judith, you've been stressed forever, but you don't seem to have really noticed.
Right.
Let's just turn the volume up on that and maybe you'll do something. So the symptoms were, for instance, trying to go to an appointment in Northampton, getting lost, which is one of my specialisms, but not being capable of actually doing anything about that. Ringing my husband in floods of tears. I'm lost, oh my God, I'm late. So it was just like I had no, I felt like I'd lost a grip on my sanity, actually, and I was clinging to him like a life raft.
Sounds terrifying.
It was terrifying. It was, to get home and think, oh my God, I fell apart in the middle of Northampton. I had to pull over and sob about getting lost.
Was it just like that one instance, or were there other things?
No, there were multiple ones. I mean, the one that was the one that kind of preceded me getting some help, I suppose, was it was October time. We were due to go on a week's holiday. I normally do all the packing because my husband also runs a business, which fortunately for us is far more successful than mine. So I'm, get the suitcases out.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there thinking, I don't know what to pack.
Like you had brain freeze, like.
Yeah, I was just like thinking, oh, I'll get this out. Oh, no, I won't. I'll put that back. Oh, I'll get this out. No, I don't think I want that. And I had to go into his office, which is at home, obviously. And I said, I can't pack. And I was crying because that's the realization that you can't pack a suitcase is quite, is worrying.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I think he kind of knew the state that I've been in for the last few weeks, and he just kind of said, look, we're holidaying in England.
Yeah.
I'll put a few things in the case. If we've forgotten anything, we'll buy another one.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, oh, I can breathe out. I can relinquish that and I remember getting into the car. We left late because of all this hoo-ha. We went in the evening and just sitting there thinking, oh, I had to shut my eyes to sort of shut out all this stuff that was just.
But do you recognise, because what's interesting, like you said, you grew up in a stressful state.
Yes.
And so stress was your normal. Did you actually recognise that this was up and above then what normal?
Oh yeah.
You realised that something was really going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had normal stress.
Yeah.
I'd bet, you're probably thinking normal stress.
Yeah, what was that like then? Because you're saying, you grew up with all of this stress. What was a normal, do you mean kind of like on a day-to-day basis that lots of things were going on and you could cope with that, or?
I suppose it was probably more chronic anxiety, you might say. I mean, my mother, I would now say, had chronic anxiety,
right,
and acted like she had chronic anxiety,
yeah,
and acted like that was normal. So partly, I guess, I absorbed that way of being from her. But the irony was that her behaviour was quite explosive sometimes. So as a sensitive child, I was kind of like, a lot of the time.
yeah.
That fight or flight was constantly being triggered.
So you had that where you were in that emotional state on a day-to-day basis, that was normal, but then this was up and above, and you knew something was wrong. And then what did you need to do to kind of turn things around, or did you at that stage even think, I can do something?
I don't think I was thinking about it at all. I couldn't. I didn't have the mental capacity to think, oh, well, no, I need a plan, because that was unavailable, completely unavailable. So we had our week's holiday.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of the time crying, but going for nice walks, so that was good. And we were by the sea, so that was good. I had an appointment with my herbalist booked for when we got back, and she's helped me with various health things that were ongoing. And I sort of said, oh, I've had a bit of a terrible time. And she said, you've got adrenal exhaustion. She didn't hesitate.
Right.
And it was a long time before I really started to appreciate that I needed to live my life from a completely different perspective to what I
Right.
had been doing. So it was a big thing, really.
So what did your life look like at that time when you said, you know, you needed to make a difference to?
Um, it looked like stress, I suppose. So part of it was that I suppose I was my own worst enemy a lot of the time. I always gave myself a hard time about everything that I
Right.
did.
Yeah.
So I was perfectionist in capital letters with knobs on, you know. Whatever I did was never good enough. So I had to do it again or
Right.
spend longer doing it or something. Um, and I never thought that I was that type A personality. In years when I used to read magazines, I always used to think, oh no, I'm a type B.
Yeah.
But I can see now how in a sort of, it was strange because you think, well, if I feel inadequate, how the hell can I be a type A? Because they're the go-getters, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't a go-getter, but there was a very stern voice in my head that kept saying, you've got to try harder. You're not doing enough. You're
Yeah.
not good enough.
Yeah.
You slacker. You've got to,
Yeah.
you've got to do more networking events. Well,
I think that's brilliant that you brought that up, because I'm a type A. I know I am, and I rein her in. But I think there is that fallacy that a type A is like, and it's often, I remember like in the 80s, it was like this real strong guy who worked in the financial industry and, was up until like midnight working and all that sort of thing.
yes.
So it's like, well, if you've got traits which are a perfectionist, or you're driven or really motivated, you might not recognize that they're A type, and they're not bad traits, but they can just push you and push you and push you, and you can't stop. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I was just going to say that the motivating force for those thoughts is interesting as well. And I think that makes a difference, because for me, because of the way my mum was, I felt completely misunderstood as a child for
right,
multiple reasons and not heard in an emotional sense at all. So I think that left me with the feeling of, I have to do something in order for my mum to love me and appreciate me.
right,
But, of course, whatever I did, it bounced back and, oh, well, that's not enough. That hasn't made any difference.
yeah,
But she just wasn't on my wavelength,
yeah,
really. So I was never going to make a difference. And I think I just carried that
yeah.
into everything else that I did.
And you're recognizing that now, but obviously at the time you didn't know that. So what sort of things did you start doing to, because I know you said obviously you weren't in a place to have a plan, but what did you start doing to start moving in the direction of getting better? Because were you at a stage where you could function, or were you in bed, or?
I wasn't actually in bed as such, although I was going to bed at sort of 9 o'clock and probably not getting up until 9 o'clock or even later. So my nights were going into the day, really.
Yeah.
I did get up and I got dressed most days, I think, but if I could read, I was doing really well. I just sat there, to be honest. And I remember on one occasion just being sat there thinking, oh my God, being terrified, thinking, what if this is the rest of my life?
Yeah.
What if this is as good as it's going to be
Yeah.
now? I was watching my home become more and more untidy and messy, and my poor husband trying to do the shopping, but obviously not doing it in the way that I wanted it done.
Yeah, no, not like a perfectionist would.
Exactly. And he hadn't really got time to do it because he was trying to work, and the guilt that was coming up. And I remember one day just thinking to myself, well, who am I when I am not actually providing anything? And there was just this yawning pit of blackness that I stared into. And I realized then that was complete and utter overwhelm.
Right.
Nothing but overwhelm.
And then what did you start doing then?
The first thing I did was, there's a little health shop in town, an independent health shop, and they'd started having exercise classes there. There was a lady there who was running some yoga classes, but she introduced one which was called Yoga for Rest and Recovery.
Right.
And I just thought, oh, that's got my name on it. So for quite a while, that was really all I did, actually. But it helped.
Right.
It did help a lot, yes.
And how much did that help?
I started to realise what it was like to actually feel grounded, which was a huge novelty for me, because I don't think I'd ever really felt that before.
Right.
I was always up here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then were you physically feeling better, or was there still a lot that needed to?
The adrenal stuff kind of came in waves, really, I suppose. Every so often I'd think, oh, I feel like I've got some energy, but
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't really sustain that for very long. So I think as far as the yoga was concerned, it just gave me, it was like a chink of light at the end of what proved to be a very long tunnel, but at least it was some light.
Yeah. And then what did you do after that? Or because the yoga wasn't the answer, the full answer.
No, it wasn't. In actual fact, she stopped the classes because a few people dropped out, and then she couldn't afford to run it. So it was like, oh dear. I can't quite remember what order I did these things in, but I thought, perhaps having done the yoga, I was inclined to consider meditation. So I tried all sorts of different ways of learning to meditate and struggled with most of them.
Yeah.
But eventually I did get a meditation practice, and that was something that made a big difference. And I suppose I had some counselling. That was another really good, useful thing for me, because it made me realise how I was prioritising everybody else above myself all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't have any boundaries, or if they did, they were like little daisy chains, people just stepped over them, didn't see them. I couldn't say no to anybody. So, it's small things, but you can't go from being somebody with zero boundaries to someone who goes, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put up with that, because it's like, it took a while.
How long are you talking about? Was it months or years or?
Years.
Yeah.
That's years.
Yeah. And along that way, did you kind of have a relapse? Did you go back into that stressed state?
I would say that I was. It's interesting. Somebody who's coaching me now, she describes a spiral, which I think is very interesting. I don't know if you've encountered this, where you like a spring. So you feel like, oh, I'm progressing, I'm going up. But actually, as the spiral goes round, you go down, but you have to go down in order to go up again.
Right.
And I really like that analogy, because I don't think you can go like that.
Yeah.
Recovery, not with something like this.
Because it sounded like if you did so many things, and I think that's the really interesting thing, because when we're looking at stress, there's often this prescription that's do this, do that, do meditation or do yoga, but like you said, you tried lots of different meditations before you found the right one, and it doesn't even mean that meditation would have been the right thing for you. There's lots of different things. So is there anything that you do now that you have a practice to help you stay healthy and well? And I'm taking it now that you would say that you are recovered and you don't have that adrenal fatigue.
I would say I still have inclinations to be like that. I really, and it's a strong reminder to me to remember my boundaries, because of course the thing is, when you start to feel better, you almost believe that you don't need that support mechanism anymore.
Right.
But I do.
Yeah.
So I need to know when it's time to stop.
Yeah.
That's my lesson, constant lesson. When is it time to stop? I suppose with the meditation and various other things that I was doing, it was, for me, the hardest part was knowing, and it's silly really, because it's a freedom of, how do I feel in this moment, and what do I need that will sort of support me to feel better now, not in an hour's time or tomorrow or yesterday. what do I need now? And it might be a walk around the block, it might be a lie down, it might be going to the garden, might be some meditation, might be speaking to a friend, you know. But so I've got this kind of selection of things that I know will boost me up.
Yeah.
And it's about choosing the right thing for how I actually feel in that moment. Because some days the last thing I would do would be ring a friend.
Yeah.
That would just ring me out, you know.
But it's interesting that you said, you know, about what is in this moment, because that actually is, you know, part of that mindfulness and slowing down. And for an A type, we're not into slowing down. We've got to do, you know, what's in front of us and the next, you know, the next thing that comes up. So I think often, like in our recoveries, we're having to do behavior that isn't what we're used to or what we want to do, but ultimately it's really good for us.
Yes, true. Yeah. And you almost have to do it even when there's a part of your mind going, oh, you're not being very productive, are you?
Yeah.
You haven't achieved anything today.
Yeah.
And know that that voice is not you. That's another big one for me. Identifying and really having a radar on my conditioning more or less all the time.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like me. That's the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, like coming into that, what do I need at this moment, and really kind of listening to yourself. So how does this all play out with your work? Because, you know, you're taking on not other people's stresses, but other people that work around you, that, you know, that are your clients. They have stressful lives, I would think, to be in the situation they're in. How do you manage that, you know, manage your own expectations or your own work in relation to the people that you're working with?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, you know, if you'd asked me this question sort of, I don't know, just a few years ago, or probably even 3 years ago, I would have said, gosh, I find that really hard actually, because you know, it's that sort of wounded healer kind of thing. You know, I want to help people so much that I put everything into that equation, because I'm almost desperate that they will feel better. But of course, you know, I have to have boundaries with the client to an extent, and not sort of be pushing solutions onto people when they're not ready for them, or it's not appropriate. And I every so often, in a sort of a reflective moment, I think to myself, oh gosh, you know, I've had an interaction with a client and they've told me something really, oh my God, you know, how awful. And I can be compassionate. But the difference is that now I do not feel that like it's happened to me. And I used to take it all in, and it was like I'd had that trauma or experience or what have you.
So do you kind of recognize who you were before in comparison to who you are now? Because it sounds, you know, like two different people.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I suppose the former version of me was like a lot of my clients actually, which, even though going through adrenal exhaustion, I would never wish that on anybody. But in actual fact, it has given me so much insight into the people I work with. It's really helped me actually. I understand where they're coming from so much better.
Yeah. And I'm just so fascinated. I could just ask you questions all day. But what has all of this taught you? What do you do now really as your go-to? I know that you said, you know, you stay in the moment, but what's all of this taught you about, I know really weird things to say, but I guess about life and, you know, and the way that you live life and the way that you stay healthy and well?
Oh, that's a very far-reaching question, Felicia.
Answer it however you like.
What's it taught me about life? I suppose I would say it's taught me that you're never too old to make huge changes. Because, you know, I'm 58 now, and it's so easy to sort of think, oh well, I've always been like this, or to think, it's so easy to think, well, this is who I am. And I used to think I'm shy, I'm quiet, I get anxious about stuff. that's just me.
Right.
But actually, that wasn't me. That was my conditioning. And I've, you know, it's like I've only just met the real me. It's a bit weird. You know, for example, you know, when you run your own business, people will say, oh, it's a good thing to do a Facebook Live, you know, and I started doing them, didn't really like it very much, but now I love doing a Facebook Live because I can feel comfortable about it, you know, and I can be myself. I don't think, oh, I've got to be like this, or I mustn't do that, or, you know.
Yeah.
And if people don't like the way I you know, I realise I pull quite a lot of faces when I'm talking. So, you know, if people don't like that, they'll just drift off to someone else, and that's fine. Good.
It's amazing because it sounds almost like if you've grown into yourself.
Yeah, yeah. The mould was there, but I never really filled it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Judith, I'm so appreciative of your time, and I've loved like just talking to you and just hearing your journey, because as I said at the beginning, I think so many people will resonate. I resonated with so much of what you said and my own journey. So I'm really grateful, and I just want to thank you. And to anybody who's watching this clip, if you've got any comments or if you've got any questions, if you want to post them, and then I'll answer them whenever I can. So thank you very much, Judith, and thank you for anybody who's watching. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you, Felicia. Bye-bye.